Welcome back to another Narrative Assassin update video with your host, yours truly, Hussein Hill. Great to be back with you guys once again. Hope you guys have been doing well. I have been doing well myself. I do apologize on the outset here that this video is coming out later than I planned. I wanted to get it out Thursday, but it's going to be coming out Saturday. And that is giving me sort of the excuse to wear a less professional, less formal outfit, because I didn't really want to wear a suit today. I had a lot to do this morning, and I have a lot to do after the recording of this video. So I didn't really want to do the whole suit thing today. And so this is sort of a compromise for myself and for you. It's formal, it's professional, but it's also casual. Semi-formal, right? Semi-casual. Perfect for a Saturday release of the video. So again, guys, hope you guys have been doing well. It's been at least, I believe, 10 days since my last video. And again, as I said in my last update video, my last show, I am trying to get back on releasing these things early in the week. It's just been crazy. It's been crazy. And I'm trying to tease around with whether or not I want to continue doing my 2 X Spaces, live X Spaces, aka or slash X shows every week, and maybe, either stop doing them entirely or do 1 X Space a week and focus more on doing videos for the channel, because I know you guys probably prefer watching the videos, honestly, and I want to grow the channel here on YouTube in particular, so been up to all that kind of stuff. I guess that's sort of like the logistics, really. There's really nothing else been going on. There really hasn't been a lot of things going on in the world or really in the news, which sort of prompted me to make this particular video, to do this particular show, because while there hasn't been anything of import, we'll say, with regards to like world news, regarding Iran, and I do want to make more videos and I do want to do more shows revolving around Iran, but there really hasn't been a lot going on with that. And my last op-ed, which I promoted in my last update video, I went into sort of the nuts and bolts of how the Iran war is affecting America's standing domestically, as well as internationally. But there really hasn't been a lot of anything else going on with that. But there has been a lot going on the broader right wing. There has been a ton of things going on in the so-called dissident right wing. So this is going to be more of a I guess an interest piece, right, with regards to people and the dynamics within the broader, we'll say, far right or dissident right wing. There has been a ton of things going on for those of you guys who are tapped into the dissident right, which if you're watching this channel, you are fully aware of all the sort of drama and the machinations and the happenings occurring with regards to the broader America First coalition as led by Nicholas J. Fuentes, and then beyond that, the broader dissident right, whether it be the Israel critical right or just the pro-white far right, and just the, like I said, the all-encompassing umbrella that is the anti-establishment or non-establishment right wing. So we're going to get into that conversation, and this, I think, is a great time with all this stuff happening for me to discuss a very important analysis and identify a problem that's been a problem in dissident right-wing circles arguably for generations. So we'll discuss all that in this particular update video, in this show, and we will focus around what I believe to be the cancer that is populism, the cancer that is infecting the right wing in general, but more specifically, more importantly to me at least, the revanchist dissident right wing, the cancer of populism. So before we go into that, please guys, if you do like the channel, if you do like the brand, please make sure to go and follow me in the description, in the platforms linked in the description below. Follow me here on YouTube, follow me on Rumble, follow me on X, of course, at the Hussein Hill X account. Follow the Federalist Press, and follow Old North Patriots. For those of you who don't know, that is an organization that is local here in North Carolina that I represent. We focus on all things relating to North Carolina, all issues relating to North Carolina, doing advocacy on various issues that relate to our state with a Christian-focused, nationalist-focused sort of lens, promoting North Carolina first and or America first ethos here in the state. I will not lie to you, we've been sort of lax on the account, I think because me and everyone else have been very busy, but I am in the process of recruiting people. We do have someone in particular that is going through the process, and like I said, it's a small operation, and we're not trying to rush anything. We want to do things correctly. We want to do things with a sense of tact and methodology and decorum, which is going to be all those sorts of things will be very relevant to the discussion in this particular update video. So again, please follow me on X at Old North, or rather go follow Old North Patriots on X, and be sure to like and share all the content, even here on YouTube and on the channels. Please do that. And of course, guys, if you want to help the brand grow, please consider going to either buymeacoffee/Usain Hill to join for month-to-month follower status. I am trying to find ways to kind of grow, or rather build out the Buy Me a Coffee platform to give you guys sort of perks and incentives to support me there. But either way, go to buymeacoffee/Usain Hill for month-to-month follower status, and you can donate. There's no minimum or maximum donation, any donation of your choosing. And also, if you'd like to do a standalone donation of your choosing, please consider going to Cash App at NAHHill86. That is NAHHill86 on Cash App for direct, non-consecutive, just standalone donations for your boy. Anything helps. This stuff's not free, and I want to grow out the channel, and I want to continue keep doing this content for you guys. And as I mentioned briefly in my last episode / update video, I am trying to get into a lot more creative endeavors. I want to get into a lot more artistic, creative, culturally related endeavors. I will always stay in politics. I will always do politics. But quite frankly, and I guess tangentially, this sort of relates to the conversation at hand today. I'm getting tired of being, we'll say, confined to the political, cultural warrior world. I'm tired of just being the guy that has to merely be confined to commenting and posturing within these particular tribal interests of like the modern political landscape. It's tiring, it's daunting. I will do it. I will obviously do it. I've been doing it for years, and I will continue to do it as such. But I want to add a creative dimension to it. I want to add a artistic dimension to it. And like I said before, in my last update video, I'm not going to go into specifics of how it will manifest. You'll just have to wait, because I don't want expectations. I don't want like people saying like, "Oh, how's that going to look?" Just wait. And when I feel like releasing it, because you're getting this stuff for free, basically, literally, not basically, you will get what you get. Also, to again, make sure to check out my op-eds. I'm taking a hiatus on that as well until further notice, but at America First Initiative Substack. So with all the plugging and shilling out of the way, we can get into this conversation at hand about the state of the dissident right wing and the cancerous populism that has encapsulated and in many ways is killing it. So let's start with the current events that we're going to be covering and the current actors that we'll be sort of addressing regarding this conversation. Really, I think we can all agree, those of you who are in the know, all this kind of started with the America First United Conference. There was an America First United Conference that was put on, at this point, I'd say roughly speaking, a week or two weeks ago, give or take, approximately 2 weeks ago. A America First conference, a conference that was called America First United Conference, was put on by one Amy Dangerfield. And this conference had been in the works for quite some time. Me and others have been seeing it being subtly promoted on the timeline on X for quite some time. And really, we thought nothing of it. I think most of us kind of thought, really, we kind of preemptively knew what it was going to be, but we thought that the effects of this conference were not going to be as disastrous and as reverberating as they were. But it was clearly sort of like a low resolution attempt to capture the spirit of the America First and Groyper movement. And the particular, we'll say, IRL or event-based sort of like examples of this, successful examples of this, would be the America First Political Action Conferences, or AFPAC, that they were annual conferences held by Nick Fuentes up until very recently. And he's done about approximately, I know he's done four. He's done four conferences. The fourth one did run into some logistical and legal problems, but it basically devolved into something of like an impromptu rally. But either way, his conferences have been legendary. They have got a lot of traction. They've been very accessible and very compelling to this, we'll say this ascending white young demographic of right-wing men who have been delving into rather far right-wing politics. And so it was very clear to the rest of us that this was sort of and I can say this as a millennial, so, as an older person, this was like, I'll describe it this way. It was a millennial coded, sort of like newly initiated, was a normie like 4 or 5 years ago, sort of like newly initiated, newly red pilled, millennial and Gen X sort of coded event to capture this new conversation, to capture this conversation of anti-Israel politics. And one of the organizations, or I'd say the primary organization that was funding this, that was behind this, was I believe it's called Anti-Zionist American Political Action Committee. So AZAPAC, I believe it's pronounced. And so that was the entity, the driving entity behind this event, which became a complete and utter debacle, as Candace Owens would like to say. But nevertheless, we saw this thing accruing, and it was a lot of no names to begin with. But eventually, as it got closer to the date of launch, we started seeing a lot of other people, notable people, being put on the bill. We had people like Verillium, for example. Those of you, I'm sure, are aware of who Verillium is. He's sort of very apropos for this conversation. He's like a centrist populist, I guess left wing. I don't really think he even has a very salient political view. Something of like a centrist populist, kind of like center left individual who hunkers down on anti-Israeli sort of propaganda and rhetoric. He kind of bills himself as being the weird hipster dirtbag, nationalist, orthodox guy, has a very, embarrassing internet past. We'll say that because I don't really want to get into the conversation of personal attacks, because this video and this show is not a conversation about deconstructing these people as individuals, because, you go to the conversation of like, well, this person did this and this person's silly. So as long as the aspects of their personality and their character does not relate to the political ramifications of their behavior and what they're doing, I don't particularly care. So, but it is meaningful to state that Verillium in particular is like a centrist populist who has sort of like newly initiated himself or embraced himself into this conversation of counter-Zionist dialectic. So he was put on the bill. You had Jake Shields, another individual who, more of a centrist figure. Jake Shields has never really, he went from being, a UFC fighter, I think everyone knows who he is, obviously, to now he's kind of staken out this particular position of being something of a white nationalist, but not really. Like, he's a white nationalist when he's around white nationalists, but when he's around like non-white nationalists, he's like a populist who doesn't believe in the left and right dichotomy. You have Dan Bilzerian, right? Infamous poker scammer, quite frankly, playboy, etc. Same sort of deal with him. I believe he's now a Muslim. He also kind of positioned himself as being like an anti-Jew, anti-Israeli actor, who also is not entirely concerned with race. Then you have people like Joel Levin, who I praised here on the show. I praised on X. Joel Levin is a salient actor. He's a Christian nationalist. He is a pro-white advocate. He is a counter-Judeo advocate, and he is a pro-patriarchal advocate. He has a few tiers of salient ideological presuppositions. So you have like the actual one salient right-wing Christian nationalist on the bill, and then you had a few other freaks. I'm not trying to be rude here, but a few other sideshows like Neon White Rabbit, this guy with the weird mask who talks about Jews and the internet and the Illuminati or whatever. But you also started seeing people like a Muslim woman who used to work for the Trump administration, the Faith Commission, the Faith Advisory Board, or what have you. She was invited. She is a Muslim individual. She's a we'll say Islamicist. She is very open about her Muslim interests, and in so much as she's concerned with Israel, it pertains to her as a Muslim. You also had some Hispanic gentleman who was invited. He's something of a third worldist as well. You had a Puerto Rican woman from New York who was invited, who has been exposed for selling Doc's Ice t-shirts, and all of this was being organized by Amy Dangerfield. So the conference went on. And during between the last minute sort of like push of promotion and the launch of the conference, Beardson Beardley, very prolific satirical comedian and musician, dissident right musician, one might call e-punk musician, and and just all around solid, long-standing America First content creator, got on the case on this with a few other people like Tyler Russell, Chief Trumpster, very prolific guy on Twitter. These America First content creators kind of got in the case exposing the absurdity of all this. And so again, when this conference first happened, it was basically just an embarrassing failure. It was just an embarrassing failure of people attempting to recreate America First without Nick Fuentes. And that's kind of how everyone saw it. No one truly believed that there was malice behind this. It was more of like, oh, you tried something, you were a bit ambitious, you kind of played you hit above your weight class, you took your shot and you missed, all right? And that was sort of the end of it. And of course there was a lot of acrimony on Twitter in particular about, with regards to, on X Spaces, with regards to a lot of the gripers, holding spaces, trying to get to the bottom of this. And the initial statement was sort of like, next time, do not do something so optically absurd while using America First, as we know knowing the fact that America First, that name, is now synonymous with Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. It is now inextricably linked, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with this or not, is inextricably linked to Nicholas J. Fuentes and the Groyper movement. And it has been, roughly speaking, for at least a decade at this point. So the idea is like, do not try to do something that steps wildly outside of the parameters of the established, modern, revivalist America First coalition while using the America First coalition's name in the operation or the event in question. However, this event manifested or metastasized into a broader discussion, a broader, we'll say, beef and schism within the Israel critical right, the Israel critical faction of the dissident right. And this is where you had Dan Bilzerian attacking Nick Fuentes, because Nick Fuentes apparently wasn't going too far enough, according to Dan Bilzerian at least, that he wasn't going too far enough with using every opportunity on camera in interviews to tie everything back to Jewish power, to tie everything back to the Jews. Jake Shields was a part of this, and it also, I don't want to miss any bits of information here, between the expose and the sort of like, the justified ridicule, and then the sort of expose of how all this came to be with regards to the AFU conference, between that point and the inevitable Dan Bilzerian and Jake Shields versus Nick Fuentes arc, in between that, it was also discovered, or it was also just shown, it wasn't even discovered, it was what surfaced in between that point were interviews, videos that were held at the conference with Jake Shields and a nobody by the name of Dane Chisholm discussing how Nick Fuentes is not fit to be the leader of America First. And you also had Amy Dangerfield have a New York Times journalist there to create this article, which eventually came out, which was entitled America First Without Nick Fuentes. And the entire thrust of the article was them interviewing Amy Dangerfield and other organizers of the America First United Conference, discussing, their plans or their vision for a new trajectory for America First without Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. And the broad sort of like critique, if I'm going to be somewhat generous here, if the broad critique from the detractors of Nick and the Groypers seems to be something like I say two main things that are sort of like, we'll say, reoccurring themes. They're immature. They're not, they're sort of immature and overly trolly and overly juvenile and abrasive when they should be more serious and they should be more dedicated to like embodying this sort of archetype of hypermasculinity. And they're too, in the eyes of the detractors, they seem to, according to the detractors, they believe that Nick Fuentes and the Groypers are too arbitrarily exclusive. That Nick Fuentes and the Groypers will make arbitrary lines and gatekeep people for no reason whatsoever other than to aggrandize their own self-aggrandizement or their own self-perception of their own movement. Basically, it's an ego project. It has nothing to do, it's a vanity project. It has nothing to do with forging a cohesive ideological movement. It has nothing to do with trying to plan out an intergenerational political a schema or strategy for ascension to power. Rather, this is merely a bunch of young idiots on the internet. This is me speaking for the detractors, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job of steelmanning their position. It's all to do with a bunch of young, terminally online guys who don't like women, who are maladjusted, who just don't want to get along with anybody, so they can have their little boys club or something. That seems to be the thrust of the critique, basically. And then while all this is happening too, you have this bizarre, ever-increasing ascension of a one Chud the Builder. Chud the Builder is a gentleman who is now in some hot water, we'll say, to put it lightly. A guy who's made his bones off of going out into the IRL, streaming IRL, and specifically confronting lower class, inner city, visibly aggressive black people, and using the N-word. Now, this video is going to be on YouTube, so I'm going to use the word at the N-word. If this was on X or Rumble, I'd be a lot more liberal with my terminology, but I want to be YouTube friendly, using the N-word, using the racial slur against blacks, and basically going to them in one way or another, either saying like, "Hey, you believe in free speech or something, right?" And they say, "Yeah, okay. So what? So can white people use the N-word?" And him saying the actual N-word, or just going to people who, because he's accrued sort of a legacy in his area. He's accrued sort of an infamy in his area, rather, of being this sort of provocateur. So whenever someone approaches him, he hurls the insults. So just going up to random people in the inner city, black people in particular, and saying the N-word to get a rise out of them for rage bait, basically. And his excuse is, I'm doing it for free speech, and white people should be able to say the N-word, and that's what this is all about. So all this is happening while there's acrimony accruing with the schisming out of as again, people like Amy Dangerfield, and people like Jake Shields, and people like Dan Bilzerian. Now Beryllium is doing something very interesting. Beryllium is sort of like trying to like fly under the radar, because apparently it's come out side tangent, but also very, very important, and there's a broader point to this as well. Trying to fly under the radar, trying to wash his hands of any ill intent or wrongdoing, and try to sort of orbit in this weird, vague area of, I'm not a groiper, I've never said I'm a groiper, I'm not a groiper, but also I'm going to try to appease the groipers and tiptoe around the groipers and attack the people that are attacking the groipers, all the while trying to not be the groipers. But then at the same time, do a John Doyle-esque, if I'm being honest, a worse version of John Doyle-esque adaptation of the groiper and or Nick Fuentes message. Because let's be clear, if you watched Beryllium's videos, and again, this is just like an observational thing, he does jump cuts. Hot take, if you need jump cuts to make videos, you're not a good orator. If you cannot do a 2 or 3 hour extemporaneous monologue or extemporaneous monologuing, if you cannot speak unedited, uncut for like an hour plus without twitching, without without trilling off into nonsense, without stuttering, you're not a good orator. So Guy uses the usual classic YouTube jump cut, fill in with stock footage or stock pictures of whatever, John Doyle coded. And the biggest reason why he's blowing up is because he's doing the very typical John Doyle, very typical Politico YouTube thing while talking about Jews. And that's a winning admixture because it's very popular right now to be Jewish critical on social media. But we do digress. So all that's happening, and now we have this situation. It's all kind of culminating together. Now we have the situation, as it currently stands, where all of the aforementioned detractors, all the aforementioned characters, Beryllium notwithstanding, are committed. They're doing a literal day-to-day, week-to-week campaign to attack, defame, and destroy Nick Fuentes and the groipers. And simultaneously, we have Chud the Builder, whose real name is Dalton Etherly. And when I first saw the story, I was going to try to not say the legal name, but it's out there. And also, I think it's worth humanizing him because he's a human being and what he's going through is actually terrible. So Dalton Etherly now is facing multiple felony charges. His bail is set at $1,250 million. He's facing multiple charges, which include things like aggravated assault, endangerment with a deadly weapon, many other charges. So he's facing, I think it's up to 50 years in prison with a $1 million plus, $1 million plus bail. And the same people that are attacking Nick Fuentes and the Groypers are propping up Dalton Eatherly, saying they're calling Dalton Eatherly a martyr for free speech, or a martyr for white people, or a martyr for white people and free speech, or a martyr for the dissident right. And all the while this is happening, there has been sort of an observation from people outside of the dissident right, outside these circles, of how absurd and how cannibalistic this movement, this space is becoming. And moreover, they're witnessing something of an implosion, which is unfortunate too, because right now, it just came out very recently, the Daily Wire, for example, is going bankrupt. The Daily Wire is on its way out. It is losing followers. It is losing money. It is losing engagement. It is losing subscribers. So one of the biggest Zionist ops is toppling. While that's happening, the would-be opposition to that particular entity and entities like it is collapsing in and on itself. And here's where we find ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, with this conversation. And the first thing to note about all of this, because initially when I was first coming up with the idea for this video, for this show, I was going to address civic nationalism and call, play around with the idea of, the civic nationalist cancer or the civic nationalist problem. But I realized after analyzing the contours of what's happening, this goes beyond that, because at least with civic, so for a few things, civic nationalism is more structured than populism. Civic nationalism is an actual nationalist, or national rather, infrastructure. It's a national political concept. It's a national political framework. Civic nationalism basically it's something akin to liberal nationalism or liberal democratic nationalism. It's a nationalism or a sense of nationalism or a national identity that's predicated upon legal framework, shared abstract values, intangible sort of standards, sort of agreed upon, conceded parameters that transcend or outside of the parameters of race, religion, ethnicity, and tribalism. But if you look at the characters in play, some of them are like that, but someone like Chud the Builder, aka Dalton, well, he's more of a racialist. Now, to be fair, he's not a hyper-racialist, but he's more of a racialist, and I am a race realist, so I take no umbrage with this in particular. But many of his followers, many of his supporters are hyper-white nationalists. These are people that believe that people like myself should be, in some cases, killed, or at the very least, violently or politically expelled from the West because I'm non-white. But all these people find themselves together. And I started to think about what is a common thread with all these people, and the simple answer is populism. Now, what is populism? Is populism an actual political philosophy? One can argue yes, but more aptly, it's a concept, and more apt than that, it is a strategy. Populism is a political strategy that aggrandizes the lower classes to attack the elite. You saw this played out throughout history, throughout the 1800s in Europe. You saw this played out, quite frankly, with the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation against the Catholic Church. And every single revolution, every single meaningful revolution, for the exception of a few, obviously, but most revolutions had an element of populism to the inception of the revolutionary catalyst. And the idea is you take a disenfranchised underclass. It could be the poor, it could be the working class, it could be the class that is disenfranchised, that is downtrodden, and you gin them up against the establishment. And that's why populism is a very amorphous sort of term. There is left-wing populism, there is right-wing populism, there is centrist populism. Populism doesn't really have a defined set of ethos or tenets. Rather, it's an emotive compulsion by the political actors in question. And so all that compels a populist really is the attack of the perceived elites, those that are perceived to be or actually are in control. So we look at the actors in question. We look at the entire gaggle of the American. I'm just going to call them this for the sake of just for categorization purposes, for categorizing purposes. or rather for compartmentalizing purposes. The AFU coalition, the America First United guys, what do they all have in common? Amy Dangerfield, Dan Bilzerian, Jake Shields, William. I know he wants to say he's not part of it, but you were there. You knew about all the machinations in the background, buddy. Just saying. All these sort of these freaks, these weirdos that are part of this conversation. What do they all have in common? Stu Peters, right? They all are obsessed. They all are overly they are literally obsessed, and in some cases psychologically traumatized by this pursuit to attack, to emotively attack the Jewish elites. That's all that matters to them. Really, nothing else matters. Some of them are more racialist than others. Some of them care about religion, really. But what defines them really is the obsession of the unseating and the dethroning of Jewish power, the Jewish elites. So for them, that means, in some cases, unite with Muslims, unite with communists, unite with leftists, unite with atheists, pagans. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the people you're uniting with actually hate you or want to kill you, so as long as you have a shared animus for Jews in particular, or broadly speaking, Zionists and Israel. Then you look at Chud the Builder, aka Dalton Etherly, and his sort of cadre that he sort of accumulated, and that whole hyper-white nationalist sphere. What is their gripe? I'd say a lot of them do agree with the aforementioned coalition about trying to unseat and target Jewish power, but for them in particular, anyone that is oppressing as they view it, whether it's correct or incorrect, anyone they view as a particular oppressor or a instrument of oppression to white interests, they want to emotively, violently, barbarously attack, antagonize, dethrone, and go to war with. And the problem with this idea is a few things. The first thing is, none of this is coherent. Because all of these people, again, they are either less concerned or not concerned at all with quality of the people involved in their movements. They have no political methodology. They don't even agree with one another. What is Dan Bilzerian, an Armenian, and we found out too, hilariously, 12% Jew, by the way, an Armenian Jewish Muslim convert, have in common with a Southern white Catholic convert in America, aka Dalton Etherly, aka Chud the Builder? What does Jake Shields, an atheist, have in common with some of the Muslims that he's accrued on his show and the Muslim people that he works with? Nothing. And if you dig even deeper into these people's ideology, they don't have a coherent ideology. They don't have a prescription. They don't have a methodology. They don't have a plan. It is merely, we must attack X. And if you are not obsessed with attacking X, then you are a Fed, you are a coward, you are a pussy, fill in the ad homs. You're not a real man. And then here's why we'll go back to Joel Webbin. Because Joel Webbin, those people are trying to drag Joel Webbin in. And I like Joel Webbin. But Joel Webbin presented at the conference a beautiful 4-point analysis of prioritizing the actual interests of what America First is. And he said it was Christianity, an explicit appeal to Christ, the one true living God, race realism, an acknowledgement of the reality of race and the biological delineations therein, and also exalting a pro-white, pro-European, majoritarian idea and standard and culture in the West and in America. Patriarchy, which explicitly talks about and addresses the proper orientation for the genders, the proper role for the genders, which is to say that men lead, women follow, men are authoritative, women are subordinate. And then finally, countering Jewish supremacy, explicitly and politically. Those are the 4 tiers. That's a cohesive, coherent ideology. That is a ordered ideology. And another point to this, And another reason why this populism, this populistic emotive, besides the fact that it attracts this sort of like bizarre schizophrenic coalition, it also attracts grifters. It also attracts the untoward. It also attracts thugs and criminals. Because in a coalition or a structured armada, or rather we'll say a decentralized or unstructured or populistic armada, where it's just come one, come all, we'll take anyone, as long as you say this one thing or a few things that we don't like, and you hate the people that we claim to hate, we'll take you on. You will get thugs in the form of Dalton Etherly, who's been in and out of jail and been arrested since he was, roughly speaking, a teenager in high school. You'll get grifters and scammers like Dan Bilzerian. More and more stuff's coming out on X, exposing the scams and the fraud that his father and himself have been involved in for decades. Amy Dangerfield, a woman that seemingly came out of nowhere. She was around Zerka and Fresh and Fit and the whole player manosphere, polygamous sphere, being basically something of like a reoccurring cam whore or reoccurring whore on these platforms. Jake Shields, a guy that has no political knowledge whatsoever, had never studied this stuff, was never aware of white identitarianism, Jewish power, Jewish manipulation, the historicity of Jews, and how that relates to Western civilization, up until literally October 7th. And roughly speaking, yay, and October 7th, around that time. Has no former education on this, and it really has no desire to learn anything other than repeating memes that he sees on X. So when you engage with this populistic sort of like mantra, this populistic sort of like principle, this axiom to drive your coalition, you will get the worst among us. You will get the worst of civilization. And furthermore, people who are dragged into this sort of orbit of these kinds of coalitions, they will be dragged down to the bottom. Dalton Etherly, his life is ruined now. And people on social media are clamoring for Dalton Etherly as a martyr. He's a martyr. What he's doing is great. And now there's another streamer. His name is hard to pronounce. It's like Hexalite or Hexamalite, something like that. He's another one of these IRL streamers who goes off shirtless and provokes people and harasses people. He's now going to pick up the mantle of calling people the N-word randomly at night while they're drinking at bars, while they're hanging out, while they're just living their lives. He's going to do that now. So, Chud the Builder 2.0 imminent. And you have the situation, again, going back to Dalton, aka Chud. The man was clearly a man that came from a broken situation. He did not come from the best background. I sympathize. But now his life is over. His life is over. 50 years, $1 million+ bail. Mother of his child is saying she's going to legally change the name of his child because she is so disgusted with the father of her child. I'm sure if you show his son those videos, he's not going to be none too proud about this. Destroying this man's life completely, turning him into a complete loser, unemployable loser, and the only people that will clamor for him are other unemployed losers, other criminal element within the ether, skinheads, white nationalist freaks, many of which were like bizarre hyper-liberals like 5 years ago. Eric Arbol comes to mind, literally was a pornographer. Like literally made money off of having sex on camera. And again, I don't want to impugn people's character, but it's like, if these people were, hey, I came from a broken background and I want to ascend now, I want to professionalize now, and I want to work with the one person and the one movement, aka Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, that is espousing ascension and professionalism, I would have sympathy. But they're coming into the conversation as purists, as puritanical. We are the pure ones. We are the real white nationalists. We're the real anti-Semites or what have you. It's like half of you are drug dealers, half of you were porn stars, half of you were scammers. You can't You can't moralize on us. You can't tell us any moral. You have no claim to moral arbitration here. You're scum. You are scum. And this, my friends, is the problem. And you know, a lot of times people on the right wing, they look at people on the left wing and they assume that the left wing is anarchic, you know, anarcho-communism, right? They see Antifa, anarcho-communism, and they're like, see, well, the left is anarchic, the left is disorganized. No, idiots. The left is not unorganized, and the left is not anarchic. The left is very hierarchical, and the left is cultured. The left cares about refinement. They care about culture. They care about trends. They care about what's in vogue. They care about fashion, cinema, art, architecture. They care about the world. They say things like anarcho-communism because, quite frankly, it's catchy, it's shocking, and, you know, to be transparent, many of them are ideologically absurd. They're ideologically absurd, and moreover, the street thugs, the black bloc, low-level thugs that do the bidding of the paramilitary, we'll say, the left, these are not the shot callers, these are not the tastemakers, these are basically the Dan Bilzerians and the Chud the Builders of the left. The difference is these people are being paid by, propped up by, and guided by the nose by actual institutionalized people. Same conversation with the Jews. Actually, complete different conversation with the Jews. The Jews are not out here telling their people to go out in the ether in Western countries and attack the Goyim. Go attack the Goyim randomly. Go attack the Goyim when the Goyim is walking down the street. Go attack the Gentile when they're... No, they're not doing that. No, they're passing laws. They're in tech. They're creating new AI software to surveil us. They're winning elections. They're rigging elections. They're buying politicians. They're working on a tier that is so sophisticated and so evolved, it makes us look like cavemen by comparison. In many ways, we are. And so the opposition, the left, the intellectual, cached, in vogue left, and the Jews are rightfully scoffing at the dissident right because we are absurd. I want to kind of go back to my first inaugural video back on YouTube and kind of re-evoke, or rather revisit, the reason why I said I want to, or what my mission was going forward with this relaunch on YouTube and going into the new year, 2026. And this has been this is not like a new mission per se, but it's a refinement and a development of a lifelong mission for me. I did not get involved in dissident right politics ostensibly when I was 20 years old, because we'll do and I've said it before on multiple shows in the past, and I've said it on my X Spaces. When I was younger, before 2016 specifically, I hung out with people that were like Dan Bilzerian, people that were like Handsome Truth, people that were like Chud the Builder. I hung out with the hooligan, far-right, skinhead characters. I may be like, but you're brown. Well, and again, I implore you to, first of all, research the skinhead subculture, as a subsect of like punk rock and hardcore music here in America, punk rock oi in Britain, how it came from the 1960s, biracial, we'll say soul-driven and R&B and reggae-driven subculture of the 60s, number one. And number two, by the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, there had been a schisming here in America of multiracial, almost the prototype of what we're living in right now in the modern age, multiracial, far-right skinheads. We called ourselves gray zones, skins. It bands to throw out there. Offensive Weapon, the Wolverines. Those who know who these people are, you know they are, right? 211 Boot Boys, New York. Gavin McInnes did an entire segment on 211 Boot Boys from New York. Subculture, but it's ostensibly. I've been around people who were far right. I've been around people that were former white nationalists, pro-white nationalists, guys who, same conversation. tatted up, face tattoos, knuckle tattoos, hate the, we're against the Jews, or I'm pro-white, or whatever. And you know what's funny? The people that I associate with were more intelligent than the people that exist now in the ether. The gray zone, multiracial, we'll say crypto-fascist, pro-white, sort of like prototype to like the Proud Boys in many ways ideologically, the Groypers, they were more sophisticated than these people are now. But nonetheless, they engaged in hooliganism. They engaged in the lower echelons of this conversation. Many of them are dead now. Many of them are in prison. Many of them have lost their lives to drug addiction, suicide, firing. The far right street level thing has been going on for decades. You can go beyond my time, John Birch Society. You can do the National Front in Britain. You could do Blood and Honor in Britain. You can do Strike Force in Australia. I mean, Combat 18th. I mean, you can use. There's so many different examples. I'm sorry, a little tired here. Of this particular methodology playing out, and all of it stems around is populism. It's this appeal of the lowest common denominator rising up from the ether and taking on the elites. And the one thing that they are forgetting is, well, I guess two things. Fundamentally, the elites and society exist in a complex, entrenched, hierarchical system. And number two, and here's one that's not that the far right people or people on the dissident right don't want to hear, hatred is no substitute for salvific revivalist political discourse. And as I said before, I want to revisit the conversation I posed at my inaugural relaunch video on YouTube, which is the reason why I got involved in all of this as an ex-Muslim, as someone who watched Islam ruin the otherwise Christian American lineage of my family, who also was raised in a multiracial family and saw all the confusion with that. And then I got involved in a lot of these esoteric politics very young. The reason why I have trenched on and moved forward is a desire for the truth, and a desire to, the truth, number one. Number two, to show people that you can emerge from a disorienting, like, personal background or general lineage and still aspire for something greater than yourself and try to put the pieces of the world back together again. And then thirdly, beneath that, yes, to exalt human excellence. I'm not here to attack Jews because they're Jews. I'm not here to attack black people because they're black. I'm not here to play these corporeal, fleshly, tribalistic games. They're meaningless. They are meaningless. You will die, your corpse will rot in the ground, and you will be nothing. From ash you came, till ash you will return. I want to be a part of stewarding human civilization back to a plateau of excellence. And I have surmised through observation of history, through even anecdotal observation, through my life, and through observing the world around me and studying statistics and watching trends, that the best course of action to do so is the following: to exalt the excellence, most embodied, the excellence that is most, or best, we'll say, demonstrated by European civilization and or white civilization. And that has been informed and developed by Christianity, more specifically Catholicism. The first one true church, the church of authority, the church that commands authority amongst all peoples and guides them to the truth of God. And in so much as Jewish power exists, and in so much as Jews have an intergenerational blood libel against Christ and Christians, and an intergenerational blood libel against Logos, God, they present a existential hindrance to the potential exceptionalism of human development. And so my view is, my desire is not to kill the Jew. We have to kill. No, quite frankly, I want to convert the Jew. I want to save the Jew. But in so much as there's a civic matter at hand, I want to disempower the malignance of modern day Jewish manipulation. And I want to do that through empowering fellow Americans, fellow Catholics, and yes, white people, because white people are the core of this nation. And in so much as I am part white, I have a genetic familial bond to that ancestry as well. And in so much as I am part black, I also want to see black Americans thrive and ascend. But in order for them to do that, they have to subordinate themselves, again, conversation of hierarchy, to the hierarchy: Christianity, European identity, authority, nation. That's what compels me. That's what needs to compel all of us. And quite frankly, that broader picture is what compels the America First movement. That broader point that I just made is what compels Nicholas J. Fuentes. If you watch his video, which many of these people barely even watch, if you watch his monologues, which ostensibly are just sort of, you could argue they're dissertations, really. That's how I kind of view a lot of them. If you watch his dissertations, essentially, monologue shows, whatever, he explains to you these things because he's a thinker. And, you know, between 2017 and 2020, or rather 2019, 1819, we'll say, roughly speaking, I too was a skeptic of Nick Fuentes. For the same reason. Oh, he's a young guy. Oh, he's a Richard Spencer 2.0. He's just some hipster suburban kid trying to be edgy on the internet. Then I said, you know what, millennial who's saying, you know what guy who's seen the opposite of what he's doing fail when you were younger, around his age? Shut the fuck up and observe. See what he is doing. What is he actually doing? Listen to what he has to say and see if there's something going on. And I was pleasantly surprised. And everyone that's accrued around him says the exact same thing. And they have the exact same dimension. The reason why populism is a cancer to the right wing is it is a hostile impulse against authority. It rejects authority. It rejects standard. It rejects elitism. And it rejects competence. All the people that I mentioned earlier, they are incompetent, they are either not elite or are hostile to elitism, and they want to wallow in mediocrity. And they want to bring together this idea that we're all going to get together and we're going to create this weird, bizarre, unwashed, masses-based revolution against it. No, you won't. Your opposition is more well-funded than you. In many cases, they are more intelligent than you. And in most cases, they've been doing it longer than you. You want to win the conversation? Abandon populism. Let those who make bad mistakes, yes, I'm going to say it right now, pray for his soul. I hope that he can pray and lead into his Catholic faith. But people who fall short of this, like Dalton Etherly, they need to face the judge. This behavior cannot stand. We don't need thugs. We don't need mongrels trying to fight for Western civilization, which is what he is. There is no difference between the man that Dalton shot and himself. They are the same. Let the mongrels fall to the wayside. Let the scammers be exposed. Let the whores and the harlots be exposed. And let the real competent actors ascend to something better. That's what we need. That is how we fix Western civilization. So at that point, guys, I'll leave it here. It's going to be a longer video than usual. In summation, guys, fuck populism. Fuck this chud, low-resolution nonsense. I want excellence. I want elitism. I want real America first.